Before we start, I would like to thank you for joining us and for supporting the Irregular Warfare Initiative, also known as the IWI, a joint production of Princeton's Empirical Studies of Conflict project and the Modern War Institute at West Point. Our mission has always been to bridge the gap between scholars and practitioners to support the community of irregular warfare. Within this broader mission of the IWI, Project Europe focuses on European security issues to deter, defend, and improve resilience against irregular and hybrid threats, and to advance the American understanding of allied and partner practices of irregular warfare. I am Pieter Balkaan, a 2025 IWI Fellow, and today I have the pleasure to have a fireside chat with two key figures within the Belgian Special Operations Forces community. The objective of this fireside chat is to obtain a deeper understanding of how Belgium closely collaborates with other European Special Operations Forces to oppose irregular threats. We do so by looking at the origins of BELSOF, some of the recent missions, and our view regarding BELSOF's possible roles in the contemporary security environment. My two guests today are Colonel Wim Denolf and Colonel Raphael Bechet. Colonel Bechet is the current commander of the Belgian Special Operations Regiment, and he's responsible for overseeing Belgian Special Operations Forces capabilities. Colonel Denolf is the current director of the Special Operations Command. In his role, he advises the Belgian Chief of Defense and the staff departments on soft capabilities, in particular on their operational deployment. He also serves as the point of contact in the field of special operations for international and interdepartmental partners. Both colonels have previously been commanding officers of the Belgian Special Forces Group, Belgium's Tier 1 unit. Sirs, thank you for your time. I look very much forward to this conversation. I have a first question for Colonel Denolf. As stated by Project Europe's mission, the European Union is not a homogeneous area, but rather consists of a diverse number of countries, each having their specific history in terms of irregular warfare. Nevertheless, if we look at the origins of Belgian Special Operations Forces, we can see that there are some shared roots within other European countries, some of our neighbor countries. Can you elaborate on this further, please?
Absolutely, Peter. Our roots go back to the Second World War. And actually, the Belgian Special Operations Forces have two lineages. The first one is coming from a Belgian SAS, Special Air Service Squadron, which was formed in the British SAS regiment alongside with the French, two French squadrons actually. While they were focusing on sabotage, support to the resistance networks, operations deep behind the enemy lines, which were executed in France, Belgium, the Netherlands. And that heritage actually is now still in the hold by the Special Forces Group, the Belgian Special Forces Group, while a second lineage or heritage is coming from the commandos, also formed in the Second World War in Great Britain in 1942. It was called the 10th Inter-Allied Commando, alongside with quite some other nations, amongst France, the Dutch, as well, but also the Norwegians, etc. So you see those origins are quite similar and formed at the basis, I think, of what is current Special Operation Forces of Great Britain. So, but those commandos were more focused on raids, amphibious operations as well, direct action against strategic enemy positions. And that continued also the spirit after the Second World War, and they formed a paracommando regiment. And so they also were very much involved in the post-colonial crisis responses, as we had in one in 1964 in the Congo, famous Operation Dragon Rouge, also supported at that time by the American Air Force. And they are, while we see that the SAS and the Special Forces Group is more on stealth and discretion, the commandos are more focusing on the speed, aggression as well, but both with surprise, of course. And that continues today in these different units, but with the same ethos and the same historical historical origins, actually. And there you see we fought, or those men fought alongside other European countries in, as we can call it, irregular warfare during the Second World War.
Looking at some of our more recent missions shows that Belgium continues to be a credible partner to collaborate with European partners and with American partners as well. Some of our most recent successful missions constitutes the Operation Valiant Phoenix, during which Belgian Special Operations Forces were sent to Iraq to support the fight against Islamic State. Can you elaborate something on this, please?
Yes, Peter, definitely. So the Operation Valiant Phoenix, as we called it in Belgium, was part of a CGTF OIR, Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve in Iraq and Syria. We focused rather on Iraq, but again in Belgium it was a step-by-step approach. And first of all, we needed to build some confidence again, or build the trust with the political decision makers. And that's why initially we focused on the training. We focused on the training of the Iraqi special forces. And that was the only first step. But of course, as it is important in the counter-terrorism and the whole fit, that part of assisting is also important, because we were training them, but we didn't have any measure of performance or any measure of effectiveness to see how our training was translated into the field during the combat, and how we should adapt that training. We only had to rely on the feedback we got from our counterparts. But from the beginning, we formed a bilateral task group with the Dutch, actually, which was closely entangled with the common strategic approach, but also towards the training programs and so on. So quite an intensive cooperation. And we worked under and with our American partners, with a great integration of a global approach to how this training in the beginning should look like.
Okay, very interesting. Colonel Bechet, you have also conducted this mission. Do you have some add-ons? How did you experience this mission?
So when I arrived, the Dutch colleagues were already gone, and so we worked a lot with the American and with France.
Okay.
I think in the perspective of international who are listening to us, what's important to understand is in the Belgian culture, we tend to have 3 different languages in our country. Yeah. So we are forced and we learn to work with different culture. It means that when we are in operation, we know that sometimes you have to discuss and understand the problem of the others, not only operational wise, but also cultural and political wise. So when we were there, we were able to conduct operation with the coalition, with the US and with France, mixing sometimes partners that have more difficulty to work together when we are not in between, helping to put oil in the machine. Okay. It also helped us the fact that we are a small country, because we are also forced by the size of the country to collaborate. We don't have all means, so we need the means of other country to be able to work, especially from the intel perspective or from air system and so on. So it's really in the DNA of Belgian Special Forces to collaborate with other nations. We are able to conduct national operation when they are needed and urgent, but by essence we are joint but we are also internationally wide, turned to the outside, and most of the time perceived as a facilitator within a coalition.
So, Colonel Bechet, you mentioned it yourself. We are indeed a relatively small country with relatively limited means. Nevertheless, we have demonstrated in the past to be able to take one of the leading roles in a multinational security assistance force mission. For example, as of 2017, Belgian Special Operations Forces were present in Niger in the Operation New Nero. And in this mission, they succeeded to take a leading role in the streamlining of the special security force assistance missions. Could you tell us something more about this, please?
Yes, so from my experience, what we've seen in the past is when some countries need some military assistance, if there is not a major coalition above the work, sometimes you can have a lack of coordination, which leads to the fact that you maybe are giving 2 times, 3 times, or even 4 times the same kind of education or training to some units of this country. When we arrived in Niger, this was the feeling that we quickly had about the situation there. So there was a lot of goodwill, there was a lot of means, there was also a lot of needs from the country, but there was a lack of coordination. And by the fact that many or nearly all countries participating in the operation were also present in the capital of Niger, we've been able to contact them, to bring them around the table and to discuss who's doing what and who's taking which role. And then when it was agreed by most of the nation present there, because for them also it was reducing the effort. It was not necessary to give all courses because some partners were giving them, and everyone could choose where they were the best or when they were available to give some courses. So we streamlined the whole process, and also we make sure to have a kind of standardization in what was given, and it also participated in some coherence in what was given, in order to avoid that things that were already given by the Belgium were changed by another country and so on. So it was quite a positive experience from our side, and it also shows that only with a few good person and some goodwill, you are able to achieve higher goals with the same means than without coordination.
This mission also demonstrated the importance of integrating other interdepartmental partners within the irregular warfare campaign in order to increase the credibility and legitimacy of our forces among the relevant populations. Could you perhaps tell us something about this, sir?
So I will focus on the ground aspect and the tactical aspect. So basically, the forces on the ground they were able to see potential actions that could be done outside of the military aspect, and that's something that went up to the operational and the strategic level to be tackled. What we also have seen, and it was something that we learned for many years, is it's not a secret that for some religions the role of women is different than in our culture. And therefore we quickly understood that we need to develop something that would allow us to discuss and to feel the 50% of the population consisting of women, and we needed to develop a new kind of capacity within the Special Forces Group. Therefore, we've started what we called deep development capacity, where we have more women than men. It's not only women, but women, but it's also some ex-operator, and their role is to open the doors and to discuss with the population, to understand the needs or with the military personnel, and to get a better situation awareness of what the situation on the ground really is. It was completely different than operation like in Iraq, where we were much more kinetic. Here, the idea was not only to prepare and to assist eventually military forces on the ground, but also to shape the environment, working together with the population and all parts of this population.
Okay, very interesting. And when talking about interdepartmental, I can understand or imagine that you have more experience with that one, given your current function, sir. Could you perhaps give some add-ons regarding the mission we did in Niger?
Yes, which was good to see in the particular case of, or what we called Operation New Nero in Niger, was that there was the dynamics of what Rav explained, this bottom-up approach, those dynamics coming from the ground, from the tactical ground set where the military met the ONGs and met with diplomats and so on, pushing things up, but also having this common vision from the top and bringing this top down. And there was a great match actually by understanding on a tactical, operational and strategic level of what had to be done. Important, of course, is if you look at it from a top-down level, that there is a common agreement, shared understanding of those different political departments, being the defense, being diplomacy, and being developed to be on the same sheet of music, and so having a strong government coalition with a common vision and a common approach to what should be done. And if we look then again to Niger, we see that the diplomatic efforts were enhanced, intensified, also to support the military part of it. And then next to that, we had already some presence of Belgian ONGs as well. And Belgium is quite, or Belgian ONGs are quite active in Africa. If you look, it's called like Broederlijk Delen, 11-11-11, and so on and so forth, with long and strong traditions in the countries. And also that helped, as was explained by Rav as well, on the tactical level to better understand the cultural dynamics. And that understanding is, of course, priority in the whole approach of what had to be done there, the military assistance. So it was a great interdepartmental match.
Unfortunately, we could see that the dynamics have quickly shifted in the Sahel. We have witnessed a lot of coups over the last years. We saw coups in Mali, we saw coups in Burkina Faso, and also in Niger, the President Bazoum was ousted out of power in July 2023 by the General Chiani. Afterwards, we even saw that several of these Sahelian nations, so Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, have created an alliance, the Alliance des États Sahéliens. And we also saw that the Russian Federation, with its proxy forces, with private military corporations, succeeded in gaining a lot of traction within these countries. Following these evolutions, we saw that a lot of the Western partner nations have lost some of their access to the country, some of the cooperation. Could you perhaps explain what were the most important takeaways from this mission? As Project Europe strives to share lessons learned in order to prepare for the future, what could be the reasons that the Russian Federation has succeeded in gaining so much credibility at the expense of Western partner nations?
Actually, I think there's three main reasons why there is this shift and what we should learn and have another approach because of those particular reasons. The first one, and a very important one, is I guess we have to better understand and work with local governance. Understand also the very complex dynamics of the Sahel, but also the governance. And I think that some Western countries arrive with a kind of a paternalistic view again, and see actually something that for me happened in Afghanistan as well, is to try to implement democracy in countries which are not used to this kind of governance as the concept of democracy. And so push hard to do this and change systems, while change, in my belief, should come through evolution or revolution. It's not something you can enforce as a third party into a particular country. And I think the Russians, for instance, understood that better. They didn't mingle too much in how local governance should look like. They understood or let better local governances work as they were. They didn't push. It's an important point, of course, to push for or to work on human rights, but not to push too hard and put human rights against all the other factors which are important. So that better understanding and taking a better, more thoughtful approach how local governances work and should keep on working and can have an evolution throughout time, but not try to influence this in a very direct way. I think a second point there is, and again, and we as Western countries had to learn and have to learn this lesson over and over again. It's about the information warfare. You see that, for instance, the Russian Federation is very strong in this information warfare. You see how they influenced some parties, demonstrations, anti-colonial attitudes, to have some groups demonstrating anti-colonial attitudes, being there with the Russian flags and so on. I think they very much understand how information warfare, it's a part of warfare, is working, and I think we have to learn from it and also be more pragmatic in our approach to this information domain, and be even more offensive as well in the information domain. And then a third reason, I think, is that they have, again, in the a more pragmatic approach, how they did this or do this security assistance. Really looking what is needed, not being hampered, and it's, of course, in our systems, Western system, it's good to have rules, but they are not hampered by any rule or heavy administration, let me put it that way, and they make use of private military companies, as they used like Wagner, to help out and to have a more direct effect on what is wanted by the local security forces. And also there might be a lesson learned, instead of again listening to the partner, what do you want, and try to create this effect, and also translate this in the information warfare, but not translate it as a win-win. Understand that what is the win for them was the win for us, and there's so much other factors where we can elaborate on towards the economical aspects and importance of those kinds of stability in those regions.
The increasing challenges we have witnessed in the Sahel, with Russian forces gaining more credibility, more influence, as you mentioned yourself, this seemingly brings us to the next topic, so the current challenges that European nations are facing. More precisely, the Russian invasion within Ukraine. Following these events, we could see that a lot of European nations are putting conventional deterrence back to the top of the agenda. We could see that a lot of European nations, including Belgium, are taking a lot of efforts to restore conventional deterrence. For example, Belgium recently announced to increase its military expenditures to an amount not seen in decades. How do you look at this from a Belgian Special Operations Forces perspectives? How are we involved? How do we look at the changing threat environment? And what are the most important activities that we could conduct, for example, within this high-intensity conflict domain?
Yes, as we all know, we come from an era of 20 years, 9/11 of heavily focused on counter-terrorism, where SOF was supported. And now, since 15 actually already, but even more since 22, we are back in, or we are back, and I call it back to the future, in an era of peer-to-peer, where SOF has a rather supportive role, or supporting role, to put it like this. If you see, I call it back to the future, Second World War, the Cold War era, where we were in this peer-to-peer conflict, we were dealing with a country as an opponent, and all those things we learned and trained there are back now, only in a more modern code, of course, use of modern technology and so on, but the basics of this, what SOF does in this peer-to-peer, are still staying the same. And I think that SOF has a big role to play. It might be in counter-hybrid, it might be in the three phases, it might be in the competition, in crisis and in conflict, It's preparing the battlefield. It's about strategic gaining intelligence. It's about anti-aerial, anti-denial, anti-aerial, anti-access denial. Sorry. So a lot of work there to be done in a multi-domain operation environment. Not to forget about cyberspace, electronic warfare, all those domains that added on since the last decades and modern warfare. Voilà, with the different tasks for SOF, but also into irregular warfare. Also, as we see how things are going, there is a role for SOF. For instance, if you talk about the resistance networks that can be trained to help to deal with that aggressor, is also an important role for SOF. So SOF is definitely not out of the game. On the contrary, I think again supporting all the different conventional forces by, amongst others, irregular warfare is a very important element of the peer-to-peer conflict.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's a lot of food for thought, I would say. Colonel Bechet, as being the Special Operations Regiment commander, how do you see this currently translated in the training activities, for example, among the different units of the regiment? Is this already being put into place? Do you see a change in what activities we are training for currently?
Yes, we started a shift in the training, so it's not that we are reinventing the wheel. Those techniques and tactics were known, were educated to our personnel, but their training was not at the actual level. So we have now more a focus on, for example, military assistance is focused on resistance build-up, resistance warfare. We are doing less direct action training. We keep it for like hostage rescue operation, but we are shifting more to special reconnaissance, low visibility operation, how to locate high-value targets, assets that are very expensive from the enemy, how to destroy them using all joint means to do it. So those are more like green ops operation, and this is a training that we are bringing to a higher level than it was for the past decades. The problem that we have, the real challenge that we have is those who have known the time before the war on terror are now living and are getting retired. So we have just a few months and a few years to keep the know, or to catch the know that they have before that they leave us, in order to bring the units to a higher level the quickest we can at the moment. But the shift is ongoing. Units are relearning to work in the close with degraded communication means. Also, the C2 command and control elements are learning to work in a non-safe environment, which was not the case in COIN. They are relearning to jump the HQ and to change place and so on. So all those things are now trained again, and I'm quite surprised the speed at which the units are able to make progress towards the goal that we gave them. So I'm fully confident that we will be on the objective quite quickly about that, and if needed, of course.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. You stated yourself, we can in fact witness a certain boom and bust cycle. We have certain periods where we focus on the conventional before 9/11. Then we have known the 20 years of counterterrorism, as you have also stated yourself, sir. Now we have to catch up. We have to again use the knowledge of 20 years ago. But what is your opinion about the safeguarding of the knowledge of the last 20 years? Because as we are now reshifting our focus, one of the risks could, for example, be that we are now losing a certain knowledge, experience about counterterrorism, about COIN, for example, and that we might face the same problem in another 20 years, for example. So what certain actions are being taken, for example, to safeguard this experience and knowledge, in your opinion?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think that we will have to wait like 20 years to use the techniques and the tactics that we've learned during those coins years. Because if I look at the situation in the Middle East and in Africa at the moment, I fear that we might encounter challenge quicker than we think in those regions. Nevertheless, to safeguard the know-how, what we are doing is we keep some personnel trained and at a very high level in those different domains. It's just a question of number. If trainers of potential trainers are at the expected level in case of coin or in case of hostage rescue operation, we will be able quite quickly to disseminate the knowledge back in the units. The question is, what are we learning in priority to the new operator? And my answer at the moment is a limited number of counter-terrorism techniques and tactics, but a higher number in green operation and low visibility operation. It's always a shift in balance, but the balance is normally never zero regarding one of the capacity that our operator should be able to master.
Well, the emphasis clearly lies on strengthening our conventional deterrence. We cannot lose out of sight the rate and also the success at which some of our competitors are campaigning in other parts of the world. I think about Russia, think about China, and the activities they are conducting in Africa, for example, in the Middle East. You already touched a bit upon it in the last question, but can you elaborate perhaps a bit more on this aspect? Do you think that the irregular threats that we are facing, for example, in Africa, etc., require more attention, looking at the balance that you mentioned before?
I think, first of all, if we look at our competitors, what's important to keep in mind is that we need to develop flexible solutions at the strategic level. So competitors don't have the same kind of law that we are using, don't have the same kind of controls that we are using in purchasing material, in buying new capacity, and so on. And also, some of them are already in a war economy. It means that the defense industry, and especially in Europe, has completely to shift their way of working, and also the government has to help them and force them to shift their way of working in order to be much more reactive, much more quickly on new evolution, and even on innovation. So I think from a strategic perspective regarding the question that you asked, the main effort is there not only for defense, but for the industry and for the government. And I will now come back to the second part of your question, because if you look at the situation, let's take 3 examples. The Middle East. If you see the situation in the Middle East, let's think about Syria, let's think about Palestine, let's think about Israel. You see that all the ingredients are there for a long-term degradation of the security situation. I don't have to speak about Sahel and the situation in Sahel. It's clear that it's destabilizing at a rate that we have not known in the past. If you think, for example, that Nigeria is one of the countries with the highest birth rate at the moment, if you see that Nigeria is surrounded by instability, then you can quickly understand that if we don't stabilize this region in particular, we might face flow of refugees with numbers that we've never seen in the past. And the situation now in Central Africa with M23, Rwanda, Congo, Burundi, and so on, is also showing there a heavy sign of degradation, and security is also very quickly reducing at a speed that we didn't manage to see the last year. So everywhere where we have interest of or potential danger next to us, the situation is degrading. It means that we are not only facing a peer-to-peer problematic with Russia at the moment, but we are also facing a traditional, I would say, insecurity in the south and in the southeast. But the speed at which the things are degrading is unknown now. So the biggest risk might be a coordinated problem with Russia and with Sahel, where the footprint of Russia is also increasing at the moment. We don't have any indication that their footprint there is there in order to stabilize the region. It might be also that they are preparing a potential degradation of the situation there, so that we have problem on the east and in the south. I don't have an answer on that, but what's sure in my eyes is we have to prepare for instability, probably for war at our doors. It might be on the east, it might be on the south, but the highest challenge now are making possible that we can be ready on time. And therefore we need the defense industry and the government to understand what the challenges are. Fortunately, we see, especially in Belgium, that the governments and nearly all parties are taking now into account this danger, and signs are very positive about defense and security. But it means that the last step will be to concretize the promises and to make money available for the industry and for defense in order to guarantee our security for the next decade.
Well, thank you, sir. That's, I think, a very interesting and comprehensive overview that you just drafted of the different challenges that we as Belgium, but also as Europe, are facing, besides the problems that we are currently observing in the East. Perhaps, Colonel Denolf, from your perspective, working at the highest staff level, do all these problems and threats deserve the right attention? Or rather, do we still have the cognitive space to focus on all these problems?
Yes, Peter, a very good question. And I think, bluntly said, the answer is yes. First of all, as you see, NATO still has identified two threats. It's the East and it's the terrorism. So the terrorism is still a threat that is valued by NATO. If we then speak for the Western countries, it goes even far beyond it. It goes about our collective defense, but our own security, the instability, and we talked about rising demography still in Africa, going to the highest peak is only foreseen, while all the other nations in globally wise are now almost at their peak of birth rate, of demography. Africa will only reach this in 2070, 2080-ish. So we will still see like 50 years of rising of the demography, which comes with all the challenges with it, of course. And one of the things, and I talked earlier on about the Russian information warfare and so on, and also in kind of proxy warfare, to put it with a broad term, they will also use this demography to push for migration towards Europe and so on, which is then again a challenge for our security, a lot of mass migration, but also for our economy. And linked to that, the economy, we talked earlier as well, as the access to raw materials, which are a lot of present in Africa. And we see that Western countries are now cutting off more and more from those access to our natural resources, raw materials, and so on. And then last but not least, also Africa, the access towards those countries is decreasing. So that means access, if there is a humanitarian crisis and we as Western countries, we want to help, it will be more difficult to get access to these humanitarian crises, but it might also be a non-combatant evacuation operation where we will not have partners, and that's why it stays of utmost importance as well to keep also, alongside the East, the focus on the global South, Middle East, and so forth. And indeed, it demands a lot of energy, and not also energy in material resources, as was mentioned by the commander of the Special Operations Regiment, but also in human resources. And that's why we see again that there is now, okay, the budgets allocated go with material resources, but also an increase again in human resources in order to be able to tackle with those problems. But it was mentioned as well that we really need to go to a more simple administrative procedures? Is it about material resources? Is it about human resources? And so on, of spending that budget in an effective and very efficient way and be able to shift quickly from one to another.
Okay, very interesting. You also spoke about the alliance and the different focuses we have. And this, in fact, brings me to my last question. From a Belgian perspective, and looking at all the other European countries we are working with, looking at NATO, of which we are part of, what are the unique attributes do you believe that we have as Belgium? What are the unique knowledge that we have? What is the unique history that we have to really make the difference in the irregular threats that we are currently facing?
I think there are some particular elements. First of all, we are a small country composed of different entities, regions with different languages. Since 1830, the region of Belgium, we dealt with it in a diplomatic way and always find compromises to get to a common government, a common approach of what we should do, I think. And that's why I guess Belgium is known for its as a general for its diplomatic skills overall. Belgium is a believer in multilateralism as well. I think that's one of the that's a point. I think another one, culturally wise, since we are a small country, that there's a certain overall humbleness in our approach, not to try to impose how we see or we want things, but I think we do a lot of efforts globally, generally speaking, about understanding the other cultures in a kind of humble way. And then, of course, we go to the culture comes with the languages. It was mentioned before as well. We have 3 national languages. That helps as well in the fact of trying always to at least learn a little bit of local languages in order to facilitate communication and the contacts with the local populations. And then last but not least, of course, there is our history. Our history, if we go far back, I don't think we have to go there, but looking how we originated from those different regions, from those different countries composed of different cultures, but then also our historical ties with Africa, Congo, Burundi, for instance, but also the very good relationship and understanding there is with countries like Benin. And then there's other particular countries also in the Middle East where Belgium has good ties, and I think one of the examples to make is the very strong relationship between our king, the King of Belgium, and the King of Jordan, going back for decades already, and which makes that there is in those understanding, in those cooperation, in those accesses and so on, it helps a lot as well.
Yeah, very interesting insights. I will pose the question to Colonel Bechet. Looking at your experience you have and looking at the Special Operations Forces that you are commanding, how do you look at this question? Where can we make the difference?
We make the difference in the fact that, first of all, the education of NCO and officers. So not only NCO, not only officers, sorry, NCO also. We have a very high level of education. The requirements are quite high, and this brings us, or it brings us, some open-minded personnel with cultural awareness of what the situation is. We are also pushing soldiers very quickly to become NCO when we detect that they have a potential in education. The second part, from a tactical perspective, is language knowledge. We tend to give all the operational briefing in all the units in English. By definition, most of the units of the regiment are bilingual. I mean, they speak French and Dutch within the unit, so it means that the officers and most of the NCO are fluent in 3 languages. So when you are working in a coalition or at international level, the fact that you are able to speak with the French in their language, the English, the American in English, or the Dutch in their own language, that you understand the German when they speak. I'm not able to speak German fluently, but most of the time I understand what they say. So when we are around the table, we are most of the time the ones who understand the different feelings and are able to bring everybody to a solution. The other and the last part is in the education is the tactical one. So we tend to open our education towards the outside. It means that we send every year SMEs or trainers to nations with a higher standard than we have. So we send some operator to France, to the US. We buy education when it's needed, and that helps us to keep a very high level of education also in our personnel. And I think that's where the future should remain consistent with what we are doing now. Our relevancy comes from education, language skills, and very good tactical level that we can achieve by going outside, exploiting our capability to merge with other culture.
Okay, it's a very interesting question. This brings us to the end of this fireside chat. Colonel Bechet, Colonel Denolf, thank you very much for your time. I think this has been a very rich and interesting conversation. You definitely highlighted some of the unique attributes of Belgium and its Special Operations Forces, the way we have worked together with other partners, the way we are currently still working together with other partners, and the way we are trying to adapt to the changing threat environment. I definitely liked how the threat environment is changing, but how we are making a lot of efforts to tackle these challenges. And most importantly, I think this clearly shows how it is very important to continue to learn lessons from the past in order to be able to tackle contemporary and future challenges. For all our followers watching us today, please visit us at www.irregularwarfare.org and follow us on LinkedIn and X. Thank you very much for watching.